Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 433. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest is General Partner in Everything Co-op Communications and the host of the leading weekly national radio program for the U.S. cooperative community. Welcome, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning.
Good morning. I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you want them to know about you and your business ventures?
Well, I was born in New York and grew up in Bluefield, West Virginia. Went to public schools there and a historically Black college, Bluefield State College. Education-wise, I went on to Penn State and got a master's in mathematics, taught college for 3 or 4 years, and then I went to Stanford and got an MBA, worked for Cummins Engine Company, traveling around the world doing marketing studies for 5 years. And then I ran a distributorship for them in Puerto Rico for 5 years. From there, I came to DC. I taught 5 years at Howard University, marketing, and ran their MBA program a couple of years. And then I started my own property management business in DC. And that's where I got introduced to co-ops. I started managing limited equity housing co-ops. And I was absolutely amazed, Dr. Richards, at everyday Black women mainly running a business, a cooperative business, and doing it extremely well. They did not have to have an MBA, but they got the training they need to make informed decisions. They held each other accountable. They held the accountant accountable, the lawyer, and they held me accountable. And it was just amazing to watch them make very good long-term decisions without an MBA or something like that, but they got the education they needed in a co-op.
Share with our audience about what is a co-op.
So a co-op is a business that is owned and operated for and by its members. There are 4 different sectors of co-ops. If it's owned and controlled by the employees, it's called a worker co-op. If it is owned and controlled by the people that uses the products or services, it's called a consumer cooperative. And in the consumer co-op, you have housing co-ops, you have credit unions or co-ops, which a lot of people don't know. And then you have rural electric and the consumer co-ops. Then the other 2 types are purchasing co-ops, where a group of people or a group of businesses come together, form a business that purchases what they need to whatever they're producing. And farmers are people that uses that a lot. Then the other type of business is a marketing co-op, where businesses get together and form a business to market their products. And they may get into markets that they couldn't get into individually. Like I was in Los Angeles and I bought some eggs from Wisconsin through a co-op. So these farmer can get his products to different markets through the marketing co-op that he or she couldn't get on their own. So those are the 4 different types. And so any business you can think of could be a co-op. It's just a structure, but it's owned and controlled by its members for the benefit of its members, not for the benefits of stockholders that may not live in a community, may not work in the business, may not have anything to do with the business except put some money in and extract the profits. The profits of a co-op goes to its members, and the members decide what to do with that profit.
When you talk about housing co-op or real estate co-op, there's a person that I know in California was living in a building, and they purchased the apartments as a co-op. What happens to that property? Unlike if I own my house and I pass away, what happens to that unit if a person is in a housing co-op?
So first, let me go back and say a little bit that a housing co-op, well, let's take any building. Let's take, you've got a 100-unit building. It's 5 floors. Now let's make it 3 floors to walk up, got 100 units in it. That 100-unit building could be an apartment building, which we know a lot of. It could be a condominium, or it could be a co-op. It's just the legal structure and then how it operates. If it's a co-op, which is different from a condo has a deed like the house you talked about. It has a deed, and you can get a mortgage on that deed, and it goes into your estate. And if you pass away, it goes into probate, just like any other asset. The condo and the house does that. The apartment building is owned by investors, and it would also be in their estate. The co-op is owned by the individual. I am in a 57-unit co-op right now in DC. I live in it. I own it. I have a share of stock that gives me the same rights and privileges that deed did for if this was a condo. And I can get a share loan, not a mortgage, because this is personal property. I can get a share loan on this. Fortunately, I don't have a mortgage or share loan. If I pass, this goes into my estate just as if it were a condo or a house. It goes into my estate and it goes into probate. This is called a market rate co-op. Sometimes if it's a limited equity co-op, there may be restrictions on what can happen to that unit after one is deceased. But that depends on the bylaws and which one has to look at.
Tell us the backstory, Vernon. What got you so fired up about co-ops, even to the point of doing a weekly radio show?
I got into the property management business to make money, totally capitalist. That's why I got an MBA and was to make money. I didn't make a lot of money at it, but I learned about co-ops. So I decided that's the reason. So I started working in different organizations, local organizations called the Potomac Association of Housing Co-op. I joined that so I could get business. I could learn about co-ops and maybe get under contract to manage these co-ops. Potomac handles DC, Maryland, and Virginia. From there, I got into the National Association of Housing Co-ops, and I just continued to learn about how co-ops work and function. And remember, I told you when I first started managing these co-ops, I was amazed at how everyday people, like one lady that was the president worked for the Metro line. She was a bus driver. Another lady did hair. They were just everyday teachers, assistant teachers, everyday people making really informed decisions. And there are 7 principles, values and principles. The 5th one is called education, training, and information. And in the co-op's budget, you'll find a line for education, training, and information most of the time. And that education, training, and information is for those co-op members to get training, particularly the board. So I like that. I like there's 7 principles. I like those principles. I like the cooperative values. Again, the more I learned, the more I liked. So in the MBA, Dr. Richards, every decision was made on what's the greatest return on investment to the stockholder. I was uneasy at that in those classes in the 70s at Stanford, at Palo Alto, but I couldn't articulate my uneasiness. It wasn't until I got into this co-op world that I realized, well, what about the greatest return on investment for the employees? What about the greatest return on investment for the community? What about the greatest return for our planet? What's best for the planet? That's not what the decisions were made on of what in my training and education. So I really like the ethical principles of cooperations, which are honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. And that caring for others is like the golden rule to me. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. So these values, if it's a co-op, it works under values and principles of cooperation. The more I learned about it, the more I liked it. And yes, I'm on fire.
So I know that we're talking about one of the buzzwords or what's trending now, ESG, the environment sustainability. Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like some of the core principles around co-oping, it has already gone into sustainability and that whole ESG. So for them to meet all the compliance and everything, it seems like it'll just be a great fit.
The ESG is sort of like the DNA of co-ops. These values and principles were written down in 1844 in England. But I have it that if you go back and you look at how we evolved as humans, it was always in a social setting where we helped each other. If you go back and look at the tribes, the Native Americans and the African tribes, everybody had to do what, they had tasks that they had to do. The kids had tasks, the older folks, the women, the men, everybody had tasks to do. And if that task got done, then the community was better off. If they didn't get done, then the community was not better off, or there's something that was hurting. And that's what cooperation is. And to me, it's the fundamentalness of humanity, how we work together to help each other. And we brought that over here on the slave ships. That was on the ships when we came over. We had mutual aid societies during slavery where we helped each other to bury each other. We helped each other to learn how to read. We helped each other in insurances. There was something called susus. There were banks, again, mostly women-run banks where you put in a certain amount every week or every month. Say if you put in something every month, $100, and if there were 10 people, it would be $1,000 that somebody would draw out each month. And there would be a head banker that would sort of organize and make this to happen. But we've done this and we brought it over. And it's helped us to get out of slavery. The things that we worked together is churches and historically Black colleges and universities. We would put things together with pennies and dollars and nickels. And by working together, we've created some great institutions. So I just think cooperation is the core of humanity and the core of our Blackness.
I love that you said that. And when you hear the narrative and what's spent on the media, what's spent in our communities is that we don't help each other. Thank you for busting that myth. And that it is in our DNA. And that's what I know. But we, our soul, and even you hear it amongst each other, we don't help each other. We're crabs in the bucket. And we don't want to see each other grow and expand. Where is that coming from?
I don't know where it came from, but I just think it's false as all get out. I said as bad as hell. It's just not what our history has been. We have helped each other. Now, there's some of us that hurt ourselves. It seems like when we are hurting, an individual that's hurting will go out and hurt others. If there's things that's wrong in our society, growing up Black in America, our society hurts us, Black men and Black women. And too often, when there's no hope, we end up medicating ourselves, whether that's marijuana or heroin or cocaine or meth or amphetamines or whatever. We medicate ourselves. There isn't any hope. Co-ops help people to get hope. A lady on our program said, Dame Pauline Green was the chair of the International Cooperative Alliance. And she said that co-ops help people to come out of poverty with dignity. And that dignity comes out with people having voice. In a co-op, you learn how to express yourself, to say what's on your mind, and people begin to listen to each other. And they learn how to make decisions together, learn how to, when there's a conflict, Dr. Richards wants to take the organization left and I want to take it right. Well, how do we get together and talk about that and decide that there may be a different way? It may be left first, then right. It may be going down the middle, but there's a way that we can come together, talk about it. Getting that voice help people to get dignity and self-worth. And out of that, you get hope. So I don't know where it came from that we are crabs in a barrel and we're going to pull down each other. I can see that in this society, the whole goal of the white man was to keep us divided. And that's one way of keeping us divided, providing that false narrative. So I would imagine that might be where it came from. But under the core of us, Black folks, Black and white, but particularly Black folks, was us helping each other, lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. And that's, again, why I got on fire about co-ops. That's what the whole basis of co-ops is. How do I help you and you help me? How do we do that?
Vernon, what is the biggest takeaway of our interview today? What do you want our audience to leave with?
So I told you I went to the Potomac Association, I went to the National Association, and there were two older white gentlemen. One died about 3 years ago at 97. The other one's at about 90 in a nursing home now. And they kept saying that if people, talking about housing co-ops, if we could get developers to build them, then people would buy them. And I said eventually that no, people don't know about co-ops. They don't know the benefits of co-ops. And if people knew the benefits of co-ops, in this case, they would demand cooperative housing. They would demand it from the government. You put money in co-op housing as opposed to apartment buildings. And if they demand them and know about them, then they would buy them. So my goal coming out of the National Association of Housing Co-ops, I was the president at the time, was to get people to know about co-ops, the benefits of co-ops at the individual level, that self-worth, that dignity. At the community level, people helping each other. In the co-op, people live in the community, they work in the community, live in the community. Normally they get a higher wage than it would if it's a capitalistic business, and they get a share in the profits. The community, the individual's better off, the family's better off, community's better off. So I want people to know about co-ops, look out for co-ops to buy from them and to start them. Again, helping each other, coming together. Normally it takes 5 people. It could happen with 3 people to start a co-op. There are all kinds of resources around to help one start a co-op. Now you can get an SBA loan. That's a recent, in the last couple of years. Okay. So start co-ops, learn about co-ops, help yourself, help your family, help your community.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Cabot Creamery is one. But there's a co-op out of Atlanta. It's called the Federation of Southern Co-ops. It was created in 1967 during the Civil Rights Movement. It was created for and by Black farmers to help Black farmers. They ended up suing the Department of Agriculture and winning. They didn't get as much as they should have because the Department of Agriculture was not loaning money to Blacks. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s were being discriminated against and lost land. In 1906 or so, it was estimated that Blacks owned 30 million acres of land. It's down to 2.5 million acres of land today. That land was stolen. They could not get the loan. They migrated to, Detroit and Cleveland and DC and New York. The farmers did and left the land. The Federation of Southern Co-ops have come together of these farmers, and they've created credit unions and these purchasing co-ops and these marketing co-ops to market their products out. And there's a lot of education that happens, okay? A lot of education. And if you go to the credit unions, you can just look up credit unions and they're all over. They are designed to help the people that deposit their monies there by giving them better car loans and loans for computers. And the larger ones will give very good mortgages and share loans that we've talked about. So you got the housing co-ops, the credit unions, There's a group called REI, Recreational Equipment. It's a co-op. It's a very large co-op. You've got Land O'Lakes, Cabot Creamery, Ocean Spray. And there's a group in Pittsburgh of Black women that's called Ujamaa. They are artists. They do jewelry and paintings and clothing. And they have a storefront in Pittsburgh to sell their products. And you can find them at Ujamaa Collective, I believe it's .org. But just put in Ujamaa Collective in Google, and you can pull these up, and they're Black women. Now, they'll take artwork from other Black women throughout the diaspora and put it in their store. But the products are great. One year, 5-6 years ago, I went there and I bought Christmas gifts from that store. And I told them my only problem was their prices were too low based on their quality. I thought they ought to be selling for higher, and that's unusual. But there's a group of Zuni Indians tribe in Zuni, New Mexico, I think they're at, Arizona. They are just like Ujamaa. It's a group this is men and women of the tribe that make mostly jewelry, but pottery and paintings. And I think it's zunipueblo.org that you could buy their products. And 3 years ago, I did the same thing. I went out there and bought my Christmas gift. But that was mainly for women. The jewelry was phenomenal. Pricing is extraordinarily, I think, low based on the quality. But they found that in both cases, they get a better return for their jewelry by selling it themselves than by going through a middle person. The middleman would normally give them pennies compared to what they can get now, and they can sell directly to the customer. So those are some examples of different co-ops. Co-ops are all around us. They're silent, and we're trying to get the word out. And that's what I would like people from this audience to know, Dr. Richards, that they're all around. But I really want people to look at starting their own. Look at starting your own. If you're a home healthcare worker, get with 3, 4, 5 of your friends and start your own healthcare business. The largest worker co-op in the U.S. is a 1,500 member co-op in New York that's a home healthcare. And there's a group called CDF, Cooperative Development Foundation, cdf.coop is their webpage. They do training every year for starting home healthcare workers. And now they have funds to help people to get started. I don't know about you, Dr. Richards, but I'm in the age where having a home healthcare worker is very likely. And I've got friends that have difficulty finding somebody that's good, dependable, and won't steal. Okay. So this is a great place to be if you're in nursing or anywhere in the healthcare. And the co-ops, the groups of them, like the National Association of Housing Co-ops or NCBA, National Cooperative Business Association, they come together to help, if you will, lobby, which is not a good word anymore, but lobby the government, teach the government about co-ops, and ask for help. In the case of the 1,500 unit co-op in New York, they've been lobbying to get Medicare to pay a higher price, for home health care workers. So there are a lot of different businesses and a lot of businesses that can be started under the co-op banner to help the individual worker and their families.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about legacy. Vernon, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
My mama's baby boy who loved to help people, who helped people to understand how to co-op, how to work together, how to lift each other up, how to have families that work. There was an article I read about a lady by the name of Christina, who's Hispanic. She was a maid. She made $7 an hour as a maid. She got into a group. They started their own co-op. She went to $20 an hour. Okay. She decided, because she was now making at $20 an hour. If you go $7 an hour times 40 hours, that's $280 a year. And she was living in New York. But at $20 an hour, she only had to work 14 hours to get the same $280. So she had 2 kids. She worked less hours and spent more time with her children. So the family's much better off and the community's much better off. So my legacy would be that I really preached this co-op, got people to understand it. There's a spiritual side of this also, particularly when you just talk about helping each other. What's best for the group as opposed to what's best for Vernon. What's best for the group of the co-op that we're in. So I want to be known as somebody that helped people to have better quality of life. I was in a group and they came up with voice. I used my voice to help people have a better quality of life. And this lady said to me, Black lady, I hear voice. And I said, yeah, I said voice. She said, no, I hear V, Vernon, O, Oaks, I, inspires, C, communities, E, everywhere. Vernon Oaks inspires communities everywhere, using his voice so that people will have a better quality of life. And that's the legacy I would like to be known as.
Powerful, and I love acronyms. So thank you for sharing that. I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not. And this person has inspired you, Vernon, so much. Who is that person and what are you saying?
There are 2. One is Florrie Ellen Oaks, my mama. She went back to school and graduated. She went back to college and graduated when I was 13. She had 6 kids, graduated magna cum laude. And I didn't find this out until after she died. She majored in business. I didn't know that. She ended up teaching school, elementary school. And I would get up and study with her at night, and she worked with me. I had a speech impediment. And so reading and writing was difficult for me. Spelling was terrible. But I would get up in the middle of the night and I'd learn how to study. She taught me how to study, and I used that throughout all of my formal education, and still will use it now if I have to work on something. And the other one is a guy named Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson was my boss at Howard University. We would go to lunch one day a week, and he would bring a subject and we would talk about it. And he taught me something called simplistic living. And it was basically how to go through life getting what you need as opposed to what you want, having a focus on needs as opposed to wants, and spending most of your effort in savings so that the income off of your savings would pay for your needs. That freed me up from wanting or needing money. And I eventually got there, particularly through real estate. And he said to me that when you get enough money that the income, passive income, pays for your needs, then your time is your own, and that's what freedom is. When you can decide who you're going to work with or for or what you're going to do. You get up in the morning and say, yeah, I want to do this, or no, I don't want to do that. Or somebody asks you, you can choose. You don't have to do it to eat. Over the 5 years that I was at Howard, that's what he taught me and I came away with, and it's really changed my life. So those are 2 main. There's been several, okay, but those are the 2 main, my mother and Dr. Larry Johnson.
What problem exists in the world today that you'd like to solve?
Climate change. My undergrad majors were math and chemistry. I had a dual major. So I've never used the chemistry in a working environment. But it's climate change from the chemical standpoint of what CO2 does and what the burning of fossil fuel does to our atmosphere. But it is really how we treat each other and how we treat the planet. I have it that co-ops have people first. The whole idea is for the workers, planet second, and profit third. Profit is important. You have to make a profit in order to stay alive. But it's the third, people's first, planet second. But in the capitalistic business, there's still 3 Ps, but it's profit first, profit second, and profit third. Climate change is number one, and it's huge. In our communities, I live in DC, in the community, it's helping each other. It's helping us to get educated and get financially sound, enough income to pay for our needs. We don't have to stress out and worry, and we have hope. Climate change, top of the list.
How can they listen to your radio show?
Well, you can go to the webpage, www.everything.coop, and you can listen to 360 or so, thereabout, past podcasts. Or in the top right-hand corner, it says Listen Live. And you can listen live at 10:30 Thursday mornings. So you can go through it by our webpage, everything.coop, or the radio station is WOL AM, which is one of Kathy Hughes' radio stations, the talk radio station in DC. And you could go to their webpage and listen live at 10:30 on Thursday mornings, which is tomorrow morning. Have I got my days? What's the date? Wednesday?
Yeah, you have it correct, tomorrow. Now, when they listen to the show, it may not be tomorrow. It may be a couple days.
They listen live. They'll be listening live tomorrow.
Right. But this is not airing for them to listen. So tomorrow for them, like if we say listen tomorrow. So they're like, but it's every Thursday they can listen live on WOL AM in Washington, D.C. So we just want to clarify that. So they're not trying to listen. And the thing about the podcasting, because it's evergreen, whenever they listen, they're listening. So it could be any day of the week. What is the best advice you were ever given?
Besides Larry Johnson and the simplistic living, my high school football coach had a couple phrases: a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. That was the first one, and I've used that throughout my life. And the second one was, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And so in every phase of life, things get tough and you want to quit so many different times. But it is getting tough and keep going, not quitting. And I like the poem, Don't Quit.
Vernon, what is your zone of genius?
Wow, that's interesting to think that there may be some genius over here. The genius would be articulating this cooperative business model and the passion that I had for it, the fire that you talked about earlier, to get people to understand and to take action. I was the first chair of the Afro-American Studies Department at San Diego State 51 years ago, and I went back and gave a commencement speech in May. In that speech, it was that, things will knock you down, but you have to get back up. And you learn a lot from the things that knock you down. If it doesn't kill you, you're much better off. And you keep growing and learning and doing. You have to get into action, though. Nothing happens until you get into action. I don't care how much knowledge you get. If you don't put that knowledge into action, it's useless.
Those were some great sayings. Don't quit. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And you also said, when things knock you down, tell us a story about you personally being knocked down, and how did you get back up?
Well, the first one and the biggest at this time was at Bluefield State College. I was the president of the student body, and we had our first white president of a historically Black college, and he was putting Black students, Black faculty out, and any whites that were there that would sympathize or march with us or picket with us. In November of 1968, there was a bombing. 4 Black students bombed the gym. And I was on the news with just a lot. And that next fall, that next year, spring, I only had 4 or 5 classes to graduate. And I got a white professor in a sophomore class, Appreciation to American Literature. Now that was reading and writing, which was difficult for me, but I would study a lot. And I found there were 60 kids that started it. When I stopped going, there were 13 kids. She was just a terrible teacher. She wasn't discriminatory. She was bad to everybody. Okay. And I stopped going to classes, all of them. I started drinking. Me and this guy, we would handle $1 and go buy a fifth of Thunderbird. And we were drinking in the student union parking lot until my chemistry professor, I was working in the chemistry lab. That's how I paid my way through college for the most part. Sometimes I'd have a second job off campus. But he came to me and he said, Vernon, the white man has you exactly where he wants you, in the gutter. He helped me to see this. I don't care how bad things were, that you don't want to go there. So I got 2 C's. He helped me to get 2 C's in 2 chemistry classes. I failed a freshman class called personal hygiene or something. I got F in the 4th semester of French and an F in this American literature class. I would have gotten all F's if he had not said something and if I hadn't changed my direction. What made it so bad, and the reason I went down so hard, I had 4 excellent job opportunities. IBM here in the DC area, the federal government working in a research lab in the DC area. I had passed the test to be a pilot in the Navy, and I had a full ride at Penn State to get a doctorate in mathematics. I had 4 great options, and I couldn't do it for this Appreciation American Lit. So that summer, I worked in Charleston, West Virginia, and took a class in the evenings and just had a ball with this professor in this class on American literature. And I learned that the teacher makes such a huge difference. In that fall, I was teaching in Cleveland. I was teaching middle school in Cleveland and took the 5th quarter or something of French. And I just told the guy I studied and studied and studied, but I knew I would not learn it. I just needed a C to graduate it, and that's what I got. So I ended up graduating in 1970, but pulling myself out of that gutter through the help of my professor, Isaac Robinson, the white man has you exactly where he wants you, in the gutter. That was the first time I saw that. And so anytime after that, when things got so bad, I didn't sort of help push it down, go worse, and then try to figure out how to bring it back up. And there's been quite a few bad times in life. I'll be 76 in a week. Saturday, October 7th, I'll be 76 years old. So there's been a lot of ups and downs, but none of them did I help take it down once it started downhill like I did then. That was a huge learning experience.
Thank you for that. That was a powerful story. Vernon, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Well, the thing is, Dr. Richard, you're so good at this. You've already asked all of it. I don't know.
And that was not a paid commercial.
There's a little bit to say about the cooperative economy. There are about 30,000 U.S. cooperatives that have about $3 trillion in assets in the U.S. and generate about $500 billion in revenues and $25 billion in wages. And there are about 350 million memberships in cooperatives. Now, there's only about that number of the population. I think the population is a little bit smaller than 350 million. But you'd find out that Americans on average, those that are in co-ops may be in 3 different co-ops. I'm in this housing co-ops. I belong to 2 credit unions. We're starting a co-op. When you mentioned everything co-op communications, that's going to be a worker co-op. We're starting it. We probably have the legal work done in about 6 months. I'm in several food co-ops. So once you learn about co-ops and the benefits and you get to see them, you want to search them out. But it's much bigger than, because a lot of people that are in co-ops don't know they're in a co-op. The rural electric co-ops, people don't know what it means. And in credit unions, a lot of times people don't know what it means. In some cases, it's the same thing for housing co-ops. It's just got a good deal and they're in the housing co-op. So that's the only thing I could think of was this cooperative economy that I would have perhaps asked of. But you've asked the good questions.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Rapid Round of Fun?
Always ready for fun. Let's do it rapid.
All right. What is your favorite comfort food?
Wow. Hummus.
Okay. And the last movie you saw?
Last night I looked at something. It was called Having Fun at Bars with Cake.
Oh, yes. That was a true story.
Yes.
That was out of Los Angeles.
Heartwarming.
It was.
True story.
Yes. Yes. You relax doing what?
Yoga, meditation, watching movies.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Eartha Kitt, Luther Vandross. I like the Motown. The Motown sound is my favorite.
Your favorite dance song?
I don't have a favorite dance song. I just like to dance. I've gotten to like hip hop, which I was surprised at. I don't like the N word and the B word in a lot of hip hop songs, but I like the beat for dancing.
Okay.
And go-go here in DC, go-go's big.
What is go-go?
It's just a sound.
Okay.
It's a sound, and it's a DC sound, and it's good for dancing on.
Okay. What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Stir fries, veggies.
Your favorite month?
October.
Happy birthday early.
It's also co-op month.
Okay.
We started the radio show in October, and we'll celebrate 10 years this year. This October will be 10 years on air. And I'll be 76 this October. So yeah, October is my month.
That's a great story. Great celebrations. And how will you celebrate those wins?
Well, I noticed, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago that most of the time we as Americans celebrate by drinking alcohol, look at Thanksgiving and Christmas and eating a lot of food, and we kill ourselves. So I like to celebrate by dancing, drinking water, exercise, or maybe walking, but doing things that are different from what we normally do that sort of helps to bring life as opposed to death.
Absolutely. Vernon Oates, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you. And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Well, everything.coop, it's www.everything.coop is by far the best way. And it has on there all of the social handles, and whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, it's all on everything.coop. That's the best way to reach me.
Thank you, Vernon. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.